Thank you. I hope someday to live up to the two introductions I've had here. They're just wonderful. They're a little intimidating. I hope that I don't disappoint you. Thank you very much for that. By reformed, I just mean complicated, and I still love Japan. It's just my love of Japan has become complicated through my wonderful opportunities to live in Korea and Taiwan. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about things from my book. I've changed the title. The first title was very user unfriendly. It's now called Techno Poetic Japan. And it will be out in Korean translation first. Okay, so what I want to do is to talk about two anime. The first one is Serial Experiments Lane, and the other one is Ergo Proxy. But I need to give you a little bit of theory. I'll try to make this as painless as possible because these things are actually very fun, and I don't want to, dry it up. So here. One of the things that I work on is the relationship of technology and subjectivity. So here goes. World history shows us again and again that technologies are both material and social. Transformations in technical life inaugurates changes in ways individuals conceive themselves and how communities form around new possibilities. Now, one of the ways I can show you this is like if you look at there is a symbolist poem. An Imagist poem in the 1920s, which was by Marianne Moore. And in the poem, she says, she has a line, "Real toads in imaginary gardens." Now, the power of that line is the contradiction between a real thing in an imaginary place. But that contradiction no longer exists for us because we open our computers and we have real conversations in imaginary rooms. So what has happened actually with the digital revolution is we have changed from a binary ontology to a tripartite ontology, meaning instead of real and imagined, we now have real, imagined, and virtual, and we do it all the time. So that has changed how we review self and other, and in some ways it actually vindicates. Although I think everything actually vindicates Freud's dream theory, but I'm sure I just made some enemies somewhere in the room. This idea that you have this kind of other place where the reality of what you've experienced is not as important as its effect on you. Okay, so here, what I'm going to talk about today is how the technologies have done this, and I think that among the many reasons to watch Japanese anime is because this is really the laboratory to illustrate what technology has done to us, for better or worse. Okay, now, another earlier one is that the Renaissance. Geometrical perspective is really one of the reasons that we for so long, at least in the West, believed in the Cartesian cogito. It's not like Descartes talked about this Western self and everybody read it and was convinced. It's because there is also this visual technology where people had a specific point of that you had to stand in a specific relationship to a painting to get that kind of worldview, that you got this three-dimensional perspective, and then you also get this idea of mastery. So by instilling this as the way to look at paintings, you actually do get the Cartesian self. You see yourself as somebody looking out through the eyes. So in other words, the Western self is in some ways an effect of an optical illusion. So let's get on with the Japanese stuff. Okay, sorry. I'm going to be talking fast because I really want to have time to show you a clip before you all have to go to class. But okay, so now, what I've done here is my book, Techno Poetics. I want to talk about technology on at least two levels. On one level, what it does, and on another level, what it means. The second level encompasses at least two registers of meaning: changes in conceptual systems and a new metaphorical lexicon. Okay. This will, so here, and then with the anime, this is what I really liked about anime. So on one level, they depict the functions of the technology, and on another level, they exploit its imagery and the fantasies it elicits and sustains. Now, this may seem very dry, but when you plug in actual anime to my observation here, it's really quite concrete, and this talk's going to get a little bit more fun soon, I promise. Now, moreover, these films evince another level of techno-poetic expression in that they use the particular technical capacities and the limitations of animation, the medium itself, even at times, in order to instantiate the spectators in the spectator crises analogous to those dramatized in the fiction. Crises that such technical revolutions like cyberspace foment. In other words, the crisis that the characters are going to experience, you are also experiencing by proxy by watching these and not knowing what's real or not. And I'm going to give you this wonderful example from Lane. Now, Lane was originally a video game that failed, but it was also a TV show that didn't fail. I don't know if any of you have seen this. This is one of the most fascinating texts. And I'm only going to talk about one aspect of it. So it's the story of Iwakura Lane, a shy middle school student in Tokyo. She becomes involved with the internet, here known as the Wired, to investigate the rumors that her classmate had committed suicide is alive online. Her name was Chiuka, and people were starting to get emails from her after she killed herself. And she also said there was a god in the Wired. So Lane starts getting more and more involved, and she starts actually having a double self. She goes into the internet, and she also finds out there's another Lane in the internet that actually people start seeing in real life. But one of the early episodes of the serial experiments actually shows actual information about the internet. And so this gives you this strange parallel between what we're experiencing and what she's experiencing. Now, it gets stranger and stranger. Now, this is the one I want to show you, that she was trying to investigate something that was happening to students who were playing a certain game. So she wants to go into the internet, and this is what happens. She walks through this multicolored, flickering space and strikes up a conversation with what appears to be a very large female striptease artist. And this female-like figure keeps doing these rather exotic poses while giving her hard information about the internet. But the voice is a male voice. Now, just think about why this would be. It's not necessarily, cross-dressing. What it is that the image of a stripper suggests an agent that reveals what had been hidden. The timbre of the masculine voice in the patriarchal cultures of both real and fictional worlds suggests authority and thus the assurance of the truth of the information. In other words, this is a search engine, but it's a search engine that has been visualized differently, right? Now, notice how this is interface design, but it's really, it coincides with Freudian dream work, because one of the things that's important about Freudian dream work is that it has this thing that's called considerations of representability. Now, when you dream, you have to dream concretely. You can't dream about glory. You have to dream something like somebody standing on a ladder. The same thing is true with the internet. Originally, when people were using computers, they had to use computer language. It was only specialists who could talk to a computer. But now we can use an icon of a piece of paper and throw it into an icon of a waste paper basket. That's interface on one level, but it's also Freudian dream work. And this is pushing it to another extent. Okay, but notice that Lane is also subject to this. This is how the rumors on the Wired are visualized, as just chattering lips. Now, Lane becomes involved with somebody that's called the God of the Wired, and he torments her first through the form he takes, and then torments her for the form he gives her. Okay, so first he's just this mouth, and then later he reveals her to be just a chattering puppet. Okay, now I'm really going to speed up because this is what's very important. She finds out that this other her has escaped from the Wired, and it's causing a great deal of problem with her friends and everything. So he tells her that she's really also software, and she can erase herself. So she hits the delete button. She comes back to school, and she sees her other self walking around, but nobody can see her. She hits delete again, and she's gone. She tries to go to class, and where her desk is, it's empty, but no one can see her. So she's gone. And now, what I think that's also very wonderful about this is it shows, I'm not a Lacanian, but this is very important to see that it shows that your subjectivity is your positionality in this world. Her desk is still there, but there is no Lane anymore. She goes home, and the people who were her parents turn out to be actors hired by a software company to pretend to be her parents. So then she confronts the god one more time. He tells her that the god is actually a guy that had invented this new way for the internet to hook up with sort of atmospheric bands around the Earth to make things real. Lane was a software programmed to think she was real, and then she had this bioenergetic body. But in her confrontation with the god, she refuses godhood. She decides it's better to erase herself. Now let's think about the gendered politics of this. If you read cyberpunk, from Gibson on, male figures are constantly giving up their body and jacking into cyberspace. It's supposed to be wonderful, and Hans Moravec thinks we can just upload our consciousness, but as if the body doesn't matter. But this doesn't happen to women in cyberpunk, because the ability, the freedom to own one's own body has been such a fraught thing that women have fought for and continue to fight for. Giving up the body is not simply, something that would be taken so lightly. It seems to be something very male. So by that token, Lane doesn't give up the body. She accepts that she has never had one. She doesn't succumb to the transcendence of the internet. She faces the fact she's been foreclosed from reality. So when she gives up herself, she's not giving up the value of the real body. She just accepts that she hasn't. Okay, now just think about the difference between this and what happens in Ghost in the Shell. Remember, there's the puppet master. The puppet master literally is a program that has willed himself into existence, and he is called Kare by everybody, even when he was in that female form. So whereas the puppet master willing himself into reality is marked as somehow masculine, even though this person has absolutely no body, this other software that actually had a physical female form is foreclosed. Okay. Now I'm skipping wildly here, really wildly, because I want to cover a lot of territory. I hope I'm not talking too fast. So, what I wanted to show you here is that this tripartite system of real, imagined, and virtual has this darker side. And Lane really brings this up, and it brings it up in a gendered fashion. I think also perfect. Ghost in the Shell does. With Lane, it's software. With Ghost in the Shell, it's hardware. Kusanagi's body is called a gitai, which is an impossibility. The gitai means like a prosthetic body. You can have a prosthetic arm, but how do you have a prosthetic body? But both of them end up wondering who they are or if they are, but for different technological reasons. Men seem to never wonder who they are, even if they're machines. They just their will to being is essentially self-justifying and gendered as masculine. Okay, so that's that. So now I want to get to this very interesting one that you may not have seen. Any of you have seen Ergo Proxy? Ergo Proxy? Okay, so this is what we're talking about. This is the god of the wired. And Lane chooses not to believe. Ghost in the Shell, I'm skipping. Okay, so Ergo Proxy, let me just get over here. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit. So Ergo Proxy, at first glance, seems to go over ground very well covered. It takes place in a distant future world where the domed city of Romdo has protected itself from an unspecified ecological catastrophe and certain military attacks on rival cities such as Moscow. The inhabitants are served by androids, who are also known as autoraves. Many are customized for various services, including to serve as artificial children substitutes for couples who have not qualified to receive a human baby from the state-sponsored incubator. As the story opens, certain autoraves have been infected with the Cogito virus, which gives them a sense of self and autonomous will. These infected machines are hunted down and destroyed. So we've seen this before, right? But it really has, it's worth watching. Now, there's a detective in it. Her name is Real Mayer. Real Mayer, a detective with the Intelligence Bureau is assigned to investigate several murders allegedly committed by autoraves infected with the Cogito virus. She encounters a creature So while she's doing this, this enormous creature sort of attacks her in her home, but then doesn't kill her. He comes very close to her and then jumps out the window. And nobody believes her that there was this creature. It turns out this creature is called the Ergo Proxy. There are several secret creatures that are all proxies. This is the Ergo Proxy, okay? And there are a number of these proxies secretly housed and experimented on by the rulers of Romdo and many more outside of the Dome City. But while she's doing this, she meets Vincent Law, who is an immigrant from Moscow, which is a destroyed city. Now, the implicit racial politics here are really important because Vincent Law, that name really sounds Chinese to me. Both names, and Vincent is the kind of name you get too. And in the first half of this film, he never opens his eyes. He's drawn with his eyes closed. It's very eerie. I'll show you a little part. But he's applying for citizenship, but he's in this sub-citizen kind of, and he's under suspicion all the time. She actually brings him in for questioning. And I'm telling you these details because I'm going to show you a dream sequence where the things that have really happened are then reconfigured in this sort of semi-dream sequence. So anyway, he's an immigrant from Moscow who is attempting to earn a citizenship, but he has to flee Romdo with a little fake girl named Pino, short for Pinocchio, an auto-rave little girl whom he meets during a massacre in a shopping mall committed by a proxy. Vincent seems to have a relationship with proxies, and he attempts to recover his lost memory and the full secret of his identity, first in traveling alone with Pino, and later with Rael Meyer, who has a strange attraction to him. Now, I want to show you this one clip. Now, so in this clip, Vincent's been traveling alone, and he comes to a place that is a bookstore. It's City Lights bookstore. And this man, and he can't find Pino. He thinks what he's looking for is a little girl, but he also wants to look for himself. And this man offers him tea. But then, as he's having tea, the man, puts a spell on him, and then addresses us directly. He talks about Rousseau, and then he says, "Let's look at Vincent's past and future." And then he snaps his finger, and we'll see Vincent confronting the books in the library. Now, but what's important here is what you're seeing are scenes that you've already seen in real life. But instead of the people that actually did it, each person has the Ergo Proxy face. But I want you to listen to the dialogue. Okay, this is going to clear things. So this is Vincent in this kind of strange self-discovery mode. Okay. Should be cued. There's subtitles. Oh, there. Can we turn the light off a little? Off, please. Yeah. Now this is the memory of the actual massacre in the shopping mall. Okay. I mean, I could go on and on, but so the problem with that scene is that it tells you everything you need to know about about everything I have to say from now on. I mean, it's really almost it's, instead of it being a self-consuming artifact, it's really a self-theorizing artifact. But actually, that's often how human beings are defined as a self-theorizing organism. So, but so to back up a little, notice that Vincent doesn't really know exactly who he is, but he never doubts that he is. Now, the women always doubt that they are, but they're from different technologies. So it's like, for example, in Ghost in the Shell, Kusanagi wonders about the reality and extent of herself because of the cyborgian body she inhabits. Lane discovers her default self-certainty was simply the success of the software that ran her. And if you've seen Perfect Blue, which is brilliant, that is the social technology of celebrity. There's an actress and there, a idol who becomes an actress named Mima. Mima in Perfect Blue confused her celebrity, her acting persona, and herself. These are examples of technological crises, coeval and coextensive with the technologies they foregrounded. In Ergo Proxy, the imagined technologies essentially set the stage for Vincent Law's self-questioning as a 17th century philosophical crisis, revisited and illustrated in a 21st century idiom. And I've read this I've looked at this anime very carefully and read it along with Descartes. And it's amazing how well the makers of this know Descartes. It's not, they don't just throw things around. So one of the, so Ergo Proxy, so let me just, while the suspicion of is the official, this is still a crime drama. People are wondering who are doing the murders and who this Ergo Proxy is. Obviously, the Ergo Proxy is Vincent. I mean, when they say you are Ergo Proxy, that is the case. But solving the mystery is not really the point of the thing. The thing is that any self is a mystery, right? And here the technologies aren't, either software or hardware. They're things like the labyrinth. They're things like the library. It's really, really quite extraordinary and very, very serious. Now, let me just go a little bit. So, like, when the first time I was in Japan, I audited. I was a auditor in a medical school, and they had a philosophy class. So I went to the philosophy class, and they were doing Descartes in English. And what was really amazing to me is the way they translated Cogito Ergo Sum was I think so, so I am. Now, just that one word changes everything. But just look at how this changes everything. I think, therefore you are. This intersubjectivity. In many ways, that is really a very contemporary attitude, but it is actually a very Cartesian attitude too. Now, if you recall how Descartes comes up with this phrase "Cogito ergo sum," is that he does this thought experiment, which is essentially fraudulent. That he making more enemies or friends. Okay, thank you. So, like, he says that I'm going to doubt everything and just anything that has ever happened and see what comes back up. And the only two certainties that come back up are I exist and God exists, right? Because either there'd be an evil genius and God can't be evil, right? But this is really a rigged game, right? But notice that what happens in Japanese anime, you don't begin with this doubt and come up with certainty. Doubt is the horizon of intelligibility. Doubt is the predominant epistemological opportunity for, if you can't call it self-knowledge, you can just call it inter-self knowledge, I think. And notice the other thing that I want to point out here, as I'm not trying this as an Orientalist thing. I'm not just saying, oh, this is because of Zen. I'm just like, remember the Japanese have been modern philosophers since the 1890s. There was a complete translation of Nietzsche by 1911 in Japan. There is still no complete translation of Nietzsche in English to this day. So when the Japanese are talking about Descartes, they are participating in a philosophical tradition they have every legitimate right to inhabit. So I really consider this a conversation across techno-philosophical possibilities. And I'm hoping that I haven't taken all the fun out of anime right now. But because I've done that with pornography before. I mean, professionally. Not professionally pornography. I mean, academically. Okay, so let's consider two of the major plot points of the Cogito Ergo Proxy. The Cogito virus and the proxy. Okay, those are the two major plot points. The idea of an artificial intelligence attaining self-awareness has been dealt with many times, most famously in Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, and then again in The Puppet Master and Ghost in the Shell, not to mention Greg Bear's brilliant novel, Queen of Angels. This feature of the Ergo Proxy, therefore, is at face value the least original. But in a certain sense, it is a red herring, since it is not the cogito-affected autoraves who are responsible for the murders. It turns out to be utterly irrelevant to the plot. It functions on one level other than the plot, however. The texture of the text of Ergo Proxy and its thematic moves allude to Cartesian thought rather intimately. The episodes, for example, every episode is called a meditatio, which is the chapters that Descartes also used. The Latin for meditation that Descartes uses in his major treatise, from which the anime derives its major terms. Furthermore, the mind and body division in Descartes finds a resonance in the analogical structure deployed in the representation of the virus in Ergo Proxy. They're saying that these artificial people have a virus that causes them to believe that they're real. Okay, a computer virus is itself an analogy or a catachresis. A catachresis, the use of a term to indicate something that has no term of its own. For example, the four vertical wooden pegs protruding from the bottom of a chair and the two horizontal pegs on either side of the chair are called legs and arms, respectively, because we literally have no word for what those are. So that's a catachresis. That's the same thing as a computer virus. This is through an analogical resemblance to the biological appendages. The same process of catachresis is at work in the term computer virus. Medicine recognizes a virus to be an infectious agent without its own metabolism that can replicate only with a living host cell. It is the virus's act of self-replication that causes the damage to its host. Similarly, the computer virus is a program that can replicate itself by executing code and writing itself into memory. Here, too, it is the self-replication that is the problem. While the Cogito virus, when first mentioned in Ergo Proxy, would be assumed to be software-driven mode, its parallel to the medically recognized origin of the term is also emphasized, first by the close resemblance to human physiology and behavior of the infected autoraves. Many of them kneel and pray. Well, when the little girl autorave smiles spontaneously at Vincent, he attributes it to an expression application. Yet the episode in which Real and Iggy, her autorave, take refuge in a town run entirely by autoraves, although there are no human residents remaining, is called Saitotropism, which strictly refers to a medical virus. Saitotropism refers to the ability or tendency of the virus to affect the cells in which they operate. Now, thus the mind-body problem in Descartes is transposed onto the digital and biological aspects of the catachresis in the virus of the plot. And I'll give you a clearer analogy. This analogy, in fact, significantly collapses on itself in a turning point in the plot. While consulting with her longtime friend and doctor, Daedalus, Real is attacked by autoraves, and they try to kill her. They kill an autorave. I mean, they stop the autorave. Examining the destroyed autoraves, they see that they had been deliberately infected by the Cogito virus and sent as assassins. This makes little sense. Because it shows that they've been injected and they still have like a vial of liquid in their necks, right? So this makes no sense since the autoraves were already designed to obey commands, while the Cogito virus is said to make them autonomous. So you don't turn them into robots by making them autonomous, right? Therefore, why would the Cogito virus further enslave them? But there is also another detail worth looking at, namely the point of infection. And I have the image here of the injection. This image shows a vial inserted into the neck of the autorave, which suggests a biological rather than a digital agent. Thus, the parallel between the digital and the biological collapses. Okay, so now, while the Cogito thus introduces a parallel in its catachresis, which then collapses, thus moving the central element of the plot into a purely metaphorical mode that will aid speculation at the expense of realism, let us remember that cogito is the first word in Descartes' famous axiom, Cogito Ergo Sum. I think, therefore I am. The assertion of the certainty of the self that emerges from his meditations driven by a hyperbolic doubt. The title of the anime and the name of Vincent's true self is Ergo Proxy. Putting them together, we get a significant disfigurement of the Cartesian axiom, Cogito Ergo Sum. Now we get Cogito Ergo Proxy, right? First of all, the syntax does not match. In Cogito Ergo Sum, we have a first-person singular indicative present tense verb, sum, and a connective and a first person. Cogito is first person also. Singular indicative present tense verb. So you have two verbs, cogito, I think, and then sum, with a connection, right? In the Cogito Ergo Proxy, the second verb is replaced by a noun, okay? The certainty of being is replaced by a word that itself means replacement. From doubt emerges not certainty, but detours, delegation, and representation, proxy, okay? Not being, but proxy. The idea of the proxy, that Vincent is standing in for someone else, is very productive. So I'd like to switch terminology for a moment. There's another great thinker of consciousness and its others who used another term, namely Sigmund Freud. This one is one of his most difficult terms, Vorstellungsrepräsentanz. It is a compound noun, and each of the components can mean represent, Vorstellung and Repräsentanz, but in different senses of the term. Vorstellung is the representation or presentation of an image to consciousness. Repräsentanz, like proxy, is a legal term. This is a delegate. Someone you use to represent you, like in the court of law. Somebody who represents you the way a lawyer would, versus the Vorstellung that represents you in your dream. Okay. Now, Laplanche and Pontellier summarize the meaning of the Vorstellungsrepräsentanz as, quote, an idea or group of ideas to which the drive becomes fixated in the course of the subject's history. It is through the mediation of the ideational representative, that's how they call the Vorstellungsrepräsentanz, that the drive leaves its mark in the psyche. Vorstellungsrepräsentanz means a delegate of the drive in the sphere of ideas. Freud's conception is the idea that represents the drive, not the idea itself that is represented by something else. Now, in my chapter, I then will go back to that clip that I just showed you and showing you how many of those things are proxies that stand in for so many of the ideas that are tormenting whoever Vincent Law might be. Right? Now, so the episode in Ergo Proxy takes place in another psychical space. The one I showed you is from Meditatio 11, anamnesis. Now, anamnesis means memory, but it's a very peculiar kind of memory. It's the word in Plato's Meno, where he wonders how we ever know anything. And he says it's because we remember it from an earlier life. You know, that we remember things because somebody else must have remembered it before we were born. So this is really memory on a kind of transgenerational scale. Okay, so it takes place in City Lights bookstore, which you know where that really is, San Francisco, where an old man offers him tea. While the tea is steeping, the old man snaps his fingers, sending Vincent into a trance, during which time the old man addresses the viewers. We are, so to speak, inside his head. After a short observation on the reciprocal relationship between language and society, he quotes Rousseau here, the man suggests we let Vincent examine his past and future. He snaps his fingers, Vincent wakes up and notices all the books are entitled Vincent Law. He says this must be a dream, but it says this is no dream. But anyway, so what is this? If it's not a dream, notice that what's happening there is a different kind of representative communication. Now, a dream, if we really believe in dream work, is odd because it's encoded, so when we talk to ourselves, we don't know what we mean, right? I mean, if we believe in how Freud says the dream work works. But this is not a dream. Let's take that literally. It's not Vincent dreaming. It's the discourse of the anime speaking to us for Vincent. So Vincent does become a representative of a representative, but the discourse goes through him to us. So note in his memory of a police investigation, the interrogator, now the proxy makes this statement. Ware omou yue ni ware ari de wa nakute, ware omou yue ni kimi ari. So perhaps Vincent is our proxy because we think, and this space that is not a dream is a shared psychic space or another scene. Okay, thank you.